Cool. So like I mentioned, Jeff, lead marketing here. I'll say I'm an amateur builder, but I guess since I'm doing this here at Reejig, I guess technically I'm a professional. But again, no technical background at all. Big believer that we can all be builders, and we all should actually be builders, right? And I think, being curious, not being afraid to dive in and play around and see what results you get from things is going to be such a tremendous value to yourself as the world continues to evolve and more people are starting to leverage AI at work. And while I have us on this slide, one of the things that I would love to know from everybody, so you can put it in the chat, is we asked you what your proficiency was with AI, and I think on a scale of 1 to 10. But I'm really curious as to what or where your organization is with regards to bringing AI in-house. So if you can just type in the chat just where your organization is. I mean, does everybody have access to AI? Which AI solutions are available to you at work? Anything that you can share about sort of the current state of AI within your enterprise would be extremely helpful. And then Kelly, just keep an eye there. Read some out when I pause for a breath, just so I get a sense of what everybody's aptitude is, both personally and both within their organization.
Yeah, we have a lot of Copilot, which I think
Cool.
is
Listen,
great.
I tell people all the time, right? Copilot is amazing. For the biggest reason being that most people have access to Copilot at work.
Yes.
So a lot of people are always constantly talking about ChatGPT or talking about Claude, but the reality is at work, most people their interaction with AI is going to be through Copilot, and that's amazing because that's what we're going to be using in this specific example today. So before I move further, I just want to level set expectations, and I think just from seeing some of the answers that are coming in on the chat, I think we're all in the right place. But this session today is really designed to start having that conversation about not only getting all of you to become builders, but also to start thinking strategically about where and how and what people should be doing to bring AI into work, right? So I'm going to talk about a basic framework that we use here at Reejig with our customers that I think is a great starting off point for understanding like where you should actually bring AI in and where it makes the most sense. What the session today is not, it's not going to be like a coding boot camp. I'm not even going to probably demo the Rejig product. We're not going to make this a sales pitch. This is really designed to just be an informal sort of conversation where I walk you through building a simple agent. So, with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about AI strategy before we jump into building. So, the beautiful thing about working at Rejig is that I have the opportunity each and every day to talk to people at some of the world's greatest companies about how they're thinking about AI. Um, I'm able to talk to them about the challenges that they're facing, what they're trying to accomplish. And what I love about my job is I'm also able to talk to them about a lot of the things that we've seen here through these conversations. And I'm able to talk to them about how we think about bringing AI into the workplace and how we um, think about strategy and how we think about what we believe is to be the best way to allow these businesses to bring AI in-house, both boldly and responsibly. And while these companies are all from different industries, in the conversations that I've had with them, I often hear them tell me that they have the same questions, right? So the questions that we often hear from people at these amazing companies and other companies is, "Hey Jeff, we're being told by the CEO or by the board that we need to start transforming the business through AI, right? But we don't actually know what that actually means, right? We don't know where to start or what to do. And we don't know if what we're doing is actually moving the needle or showing any type of return on the investment for AI. And we all know if we read the news and all of that, right? Investment in AI is only going to grow within these enterprises. And when I hear those same questions asked over and over again, it's really interesting, but also very exciting because Rejig, as a company and through our platform, we actually help these companies answer those questions. So what we're going to do before we dive into building the agent is I'm going to talk a little bit strategically about how we answer those questions and how we think about prioritizing where AI can drive impact, and also where and how it should be used. So I think the most important thing for a company in its efforts to be successful with regards to bringing AI in-house is that they just have to have a plan. I think what we've seen over the past few years is that a lot of companies knew that they had to do something as it related to AI, and they'd bring AI in, but they necessarily didn't have a plan per se. And what that ended up resulting in is what I call pilot purgatory, right? So you had a lot of companies that were just doing pilot after pilot after pilot with different AI solutions. And then at the end of these pilots, they actually didn't see any real impact on the work that's taking place at their business. And I think a big reason for that is just that they were throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing if anything stuck, right? So, at Reejig, we have this thing called the Reejig reinvention flywheel, which we use as sort of a guide or framework for our customers, and we use it internally as well, to better understand how, where, and why they should deploy AI in their organization. And I'm not going to focus on this entire flywheel for today. I'm only going to focus on the beginning portions because I think that and you'll see this, that's going to allow us to sort of agree um, on a framework for how and why and where we should start. So we are big believers that the critical first step in deploying successful AI within the org is around this idea of making work visible. So some people may think that AI is here to replace people, but I don't think that that's the case at all. I think AI is here to replace work, right? And if you think about work is not defined by a person or by people. Work is actually at its core atomic unit, a collection of tasks and subtasks. So before you can understand where it makes the most sense to sort of bring AI into your organization and start automating things, you need to have a good understanding of what work is actually taking place within your company across various teams, various departments, things like that. So this idea of making work visible, I think, again, is the critical first step in being able to have a sound strategy for bringing AI in. And when I say, making work visible, what I mean by that is you need to understand the different tasks that are taking place within your organization by certain people. And you need to understand what are the subtasks in that task that actually get that task done, get it complete, right? So this visibility, understanding what the heck is actually happening here, step one. And the beautiful thing about Reejig is our platform actually does this for our customers automatically. We'll go in, we'll map all the work that's happening down to the task and subtask level so that you do have the visibility into all of that work. Now, the second step, we've identified the tasks, we've identified the subtasks. Here, we need to have a sense of which of those tasks are the best candidates to be either automated or augmented through AI. And again, beautiful thing about Rejig is that in addition to providing the visibility into all the work that's taking place in the organization, we will then scan all of those tasks and we will provide what we call an AI impact analysis across those tasks. So we'll basically tell you, hey, this task, is most ripe to be automated. So now again, we provided the visibility into the work. Now we've given you sort of visibility into where automation or augmentation makes sense. And now you have a data-backed sort of um, uh, reasoning behind where and why you should deploy AI. So if you were to take this to your IT team, here's where you should start building, right? When you become able to be a builder, when you start building your own agents and things of that sort, you know what you should sort of prioritize and where you should start building. Oh, I'm hearing a little echo. Kelly, if you hear echo, can you just mute whoever that's coming from? Cool. So once you know the tasks that exist, Then you know the tasks that are most likely or should be automated using AI. Then you want to just take one more step, which is to design what that workflow looks like. So you want to see this task when it was done by a person. Here are the different things that they would do to actually achieve this task. And you're going to utilize that knowledge to inform the AI agents that you're building. Cool. So for the example that we're going to go ahead with today is we had run an analysis for a company that's out there, and one of the tasks that we saw that was most ripe for automation was this well, we call it a no joy task, which was someone had to every week um, provide a briefing to the HR team about any regulatory changes that took place or um, were important to understand as it relates to employment, right? So you need to know what are the changes that are happening so that you adhere to them. In the good old days, and maybe still today for a lot of your organizations, there's usually going to be one person or maybe two people who every Monday morning or Sunday night they have to go in. They had to go to a bunch of different websites. They had to read a bunch of articles. They need to see what changes are happening. Then they need to put them into like a Word doc, and then send them out to everybody via email. It's a lot of work, takes a lot of hours, but what we're going to do is we are actually going to build an agent that takes that task, which again maybe takes a few hours, and I'll automate that to a point where it's only going to take, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes. It's going to run automatically. So that's what we're going to go ahead and build. So let me switch here over to Copilot Studio. Cool. So we are going to build this agent in Copilot Studio, which, according to the question before, a lot of you have access to. Again, important to understand that Copilot Studio is different than Microsoft Copilot. So if you only have access to Copilot, what I'm showing you here is gonna be a little different. So in order to actually follow along and do this exactly, you'll just need to have access to Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio is essentially Microsoft's no-code agent builder. And what that means is that you don't have to be very technical to build an agent. You just need to provide a strong prompt, type in plain language, and then you can get something going for you. So let's dive into building. So the first step that you're going to do is you want to obviously create a new agent. So you're going to click create blank agent. It's going to take a moment for it to get things ready. And while that's happening, the one sort of caveat that I'll say as it relates to Copilot Studio is that Copilot Studio is oftentimes a little slow. So it does take a few minutes for certain features and certain things to kick in, which is why for this demo today, I've actually already pre-built the agent, and I'll probably walk you through the pre-built just so that we don't have to pause for 2 minutes here, 3 minutes here, 5 minutes here as the agent actually gets built. But to go ahead and get started, you're going to go ahead and create that new agent. And now it's going to take a few minutes for it to actually provision. But what I'll do while it's provisioning is I'll walk you through the different pieces, and then we'll go into detail about each of the pieces for building the agent. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to give your agent a name, and you're also going to want to give it a description. Now, when you think about this agent building, especially as it relates to building these agents at work, you want to be as descriptive as possible with both the name and with the description. And the reason why you want to be as descriptive as possible is because at most organizations, they're going to essentially have like a central library of all of the agents that exist. So you want to make it so that if somebody besides yourself is coming in and looking for a potential agent to use, they'll have a pretty good idea of what that agent is going to do just based on the name and the description that's available. So that's going to be step one. And again, I'll go into the actual nitty gritty. Step two, you're going to select the agent's model. We'll talk about that in a second. You're going to provide its instructions. Instructions are going to be the prompt that you use to tell the agent what to do. And then you're going to go ahead and add knowledge. And doing each of these steps, like I mentioned, are going to take, a few minutes to provision and get set up here. So what I'll do is I'm going to go back to the agent that I built yesterday, which is the exact same agent that I was referring to. So this HR regulatory agent. So you can see here, we gave it a name. I didn't give it a description, even though I said you really, really, really should do that. But you would provide a description as to what this agent does. And again, this agent is going to go out and look at trusted sources as it relates to employment and HR regulations, compliance, changes in all of those. And then the next step would be to select your agent's model. So the beautiful part about Copilot Studio is for all intents and purposes, it is LLM model agnostic. So you will have the ability to choose which model you want to use for your agent. And it gives you not only the available models from OpenAI, which are the ones that I think probably most of us are familiar with, right? ChatGPT. It'll also give you the models that are available through Anthropic. So things like Opus and Sonnet. Now, when you're thinking about which model to choose, it could be not so important, but it could also be extremely important. So for this example, though, because it is a relatively light lift of what we're asking the agent to do, I'm just going to go ahead and use ChatGPT 4.1. That one is sort of their lighter weight model. It's going to be perfectly fine for doing the task that I'm going to ask it to do. Um, and it's also going to be less resource intensive in terms of token usage and all of those. But if you were trying to build an agent that needed to do like deep research or more complex ask or things of that sort, you would then use like a ChatGPT 5 reasoning model. Or maybe if you wanted to use some of the Anthropic models, you can use there. But for this one, we're going to use 4.1. Cool. The next step is going to be to provide the instructions for this specific agent. And I've already pre-filled these in, but these instructions are going to be essentially the prompt that you're going to give it. So the prompt is going to be the critical component, the critical step for any agent, right? A better prompt is going to lead to better output. Um, and building that prompt is going to be the piece that you're going to need to spend the most time on. Now, if you're somebody who has a lot of experience with prompting, amazing. You can go ahead and probably get through this point pretty quickly. If you're somebody who's relatively new or maybe not the best or not the most comfortable with prompting, fear not. There are a lot of things that you can do to actually help you build a great prompt. So, the one thing that I wanted to call to attention for everyone is that if you do need help building a prompt, you could actually go ahead in Copilot and use a prompt coach. So this is actually an agent that Microsoft has gone ahead and built for us that will help us actually understand um, how to build a prompt that's going to drive the best results. And it's pretty straightforward. You can come in here and literally use this prompt generation command and just say, hey, help me generate a prompt, that could be used in Copilot. And then when you do that, it'll actually walk you through step by step all of the pieces that are really important for you to be able to create a killer prompt, right? So here, it's basically giving you its formula for producing a good prompt, which is, give it a goal, give it some context, provide the sources of where it should find the data that you want to use, and then provide the expectations around what you want it to output, what you want it to do, and also what you want it to not do, right? So feel free to use the prompt coach to build a prompt. But in this example, I am pretty good at prompting. I also tend to use ChatGPT to help me develop the best prompt possible. So I'll do a lot of back and forth with either ChatGPT or Claude just to get the prompt to be as fine-tuned as possible. And in this specific example, the prompt that I was able to output is this prompt here. So I'm going to pause for a second. Kelly, are there any questions, or does anybody have any questions so far about where we are?
I don't see any in the chat right now, Jeff. A couple
Cool.
people are excited to get the recording. Oh, we do have a question from Andrew. Can you copy
Yeah.
the prompt to the chat? Oh, so he wants to know the prompt that you're using.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll send it in the follow-up email. We'll make it even easier. So I'll
Yeah,
save it. I'll save it as an MD file or as a text file. We'll share it with you.
perfect.
Cool. I'm gonna keep rolling. So for this prompt, like I mentioned, this is something that I had written based on a formula that I typically use for my prompting. And this is one of those things to write down for yourselves. But when I think about writing a prompt, there's essentially five parts of the prompt that I want to make sure are included in the prompt. So the first thing is the role. I want to make sure that I am telling the AI or telling the agent who it needs to assume that it is. Like, what is that role that it's playing? And for this specific example, we're very explicit in telling it you're an HR regulatory change agent, right? You're an expert on compliance monitoring assistance for employee relations teams, right? It knows exactly who it is. A lot of people actually skip this first part, and by skipping it, what they're doing is that they're setting up their AI to sort of approach your ask from an angle that it believes is the best angle. And that's not always going to be the best angle. So be very explicit with defining the role in the prompt. So that's the first bit. The second bit is going to be around defining the rules. So, like, what are the things that it needs to do, right? So, the role, number one, the rules, number two. The third is going to be you need to define its inputs. The inputs is going to be where it should go and find the data that it needs to complete your request and provide a maximum output. So, role, rules, inputs. And number four is going to be output. What should it actually output for you? What should it look like? Tell it exactly what you want it to look like because it will otherwise sort of do what it thinks it should do. And a way that I have found to get really, really good output is by providing specific examples of previous output that you've really liked. So for this example here, we're doing this weekly briefing on any of the regulatory changes. We're automating this task that was done by a person. That person has probably created several examples of what a great brief looks like. Feel free to upload those examples into a SharePoint folder and then attach that folder as the knowledge. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. And then just the last bit in terms of what do we want to have for developing a great prompt is we want to have guardrails. So we want to set the tone for how it should write or how it should output, but we also want to provide scope limits. So we wanted to tell it not only what it should do, but what it should not do. So by providing all five of those things, the role, the rules, the inputs, the output, and the guardrails, we're really being prescriptive and putting the guardrails in place that we need to ensure that the output that the agent's going to provide for us is going to be exactly what we're expecting. So cool. So we have this prompt. Let me go back to the actual agent build. So I've pasted it in here. So cool. So we've given it the instructions. We've given it all those things that we need. Now, the last step that we need to build this agent is we need to provide the knowledge, right? We need to provide the data that it needs to use to ensure that it's going to provide the best output. And for this example, what I've done is I've essentially uploaded three previous versions of a briefing doc. I put them into SharePoint and then I attached that SharePoint folder as knowledge here. So this is basically saying, I want you to look here, and this is going to dictate and inform sort of what you output. And for this specific agent, because we said this is designed every week to go out and look for any sort of regulatory changes, any of the news that we need to know about, we are going to need this to actually have the ability to not just base its output off of what we've done previously. It's going to have to go out and do a web search so that it brings back the most relevant data and news over the specific time period that we've defined. So again, if you look at the prompt here, we've actually given it one, two, three, four. We've given it four sources that we want to limit its ability to go get data from. So we're saying, hey, SHRM, we trust it for this type of news. Amazing. The DOL, we trust it. That's a source that you can go after. CIPD for any UK news or regulatory changes, great. Or even stuff that's being written in Harvard Business Review's HR category. So we've really defined here's where you can go find this news. Really, really important. We've also defined here that we want this to be current news. We don't want it to go back in time and bubble up, changes that are old or maybe not relevant. So we've been very declarative in saying, hey, you should go look at these sources, but you should only look for stuff that's been published within the last 7 days, right? Or recent updates. So very clear as to what this agent should be doing and what data it should be pulling. Very clear in what the output should look like. One other thing to mention here is that in this knowledge session, especially here in Copilot Studio, you could add these websites as knowledge through actual linkage. I haven't personally found it to be much of a difference in terms of the output, whether you put the 3 or 4 websites here as explicit knowledge, or if you just mention them in your prompt. So either way is going to work. And what I would recommend is that you actually test out doing both ways to see if you see any noticeable difference in the output. So at this point, our agent is essentially completely built. So I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to take a sip of water. Any questions that anyone has, drop them in chat right now before we start testing this. And Kelly, let me know if anything comes through.
Yeah, I think everyone's just
Everyone's just
taking
mesmerized
notes.
by. All right, amazing. All right, cool. So now we have this built. We have this published. What we want to do here is we want to go ahead and test this agent to make sure it actually works and actually does what we want it to do. So when you're in Copilot Studio, you may or may not see this test agent window open on the right. If you don't see it, no problem. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that it hasn't been opened up or expanded. So you would just test or just click this beaker test button here. And when I do tests, I typically, in the real world scenario, would do multiple tests. I would ask it to obviously do what I want it to do, but then I would try to trick it and ask it to do something that I've already told it in the prompt that it should not do. But because we don't have all the time in the world, I'm going to go ahead and run a simple test. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Let's draft this week's regulatory alert um, and see what we have. So we hit enter. It's going to take a second. It's going to now show you how it's working. So you're going to see that it's reviewing the sources to help inform the output. It's going to tell you that it's now sort of going through, and you can see it's now generating this brief. So this is something that is a brief for this week that we could then go ahead, copy and paste it into an email, send it to the team. We can put it in a Word doc. We can essentially do whatever we want. So amazing. The agent works. We're all really, really happy. But we should take this one step further. So it's good that it will do the research for us. It's good that it'll pull in the relevant changes and news. It's good that it will build this briefing for me automatically, again, saving probably hours of manual research that we had leveraged in the past. It would be great, however, if this thing could actually just automatically run every week. So that's going to be the second part of what we're doing here. So an agent is amazing. An agent will get you the output that you need. But what I like about these agents is that you have the ability to essentially create agent flows. And agent flows are essentially going to be essentially finding a trigger, something that's going to trigger the agent to actually do its thing, and then the ability to take the output of the agent and distribute that across whatever channel you want it to be across. So let's dive into the actual flow that I created here. So Copilot Studio is amazing because we can build the agents right in Copilot Studio, but we could also um, create the flows or schedule the agents to work. So for this specific example, again, this is a pretty simple one, um, but we're going to have this be a recurrent agent. So this is actually going to execute consistently on a time that I've defined. So our trigger for this one is going to be what we call recurrence. So if this did not exist, you would just click a plus, you would look for recurrence, which is essentially think of that as like a schedule. And that's going to be what actually acts as the trigger to get the agent to start working. So for this one, we want it to run every week. We want it to work in Eastern time zone. We want it to work every Monday at 8 a.m. So it tells you right here. So basically, every Monday at 8 a.m., this is going to trigger. That trigger is then going to execute the agent. So we would choose which agent it is that we want to execute. So it's going to be the HR regulatory agent that we just built. And we want to make sure that we add a message. This part, a lot of people, when they're building these for the first few times, they often will forget to add the message here. This message is the critical piece to make this work because this is basically what is going to be inputted into the actual agent. So we wanted to generate this regulatory change weekly briefing note. Amazing. So now every Monday at 8 a.m., this is going to be the thing that gets typed in and sent to the agent. That's going to get the agent to start doing its thing and producing the output that we just saw a few moments ago. So amazing. So the agent gets executed, it runs, it has output. Now we need to figure out what do we want to do with that output. And as I mentioned, you could have it automatically send an email out, every Monday morning to a distribution list so that everybody on your team is going to get that briefing. You could have that output saved as a Microsoft Word doc, as an example, and put into a specific folder so that anybody can just go into that folder at their leisure and read that briefing document, and you can see sort of every document over the past few weeks. But you can also have it take that output and paste it into a Teams message, which is what I did here for this workflow. So basically, every time this runs, it's going to go ahead, it's going to post the output in a channel for the specific team and the specific channel. And this is going to just basically take that output, drop it into a Teams chat, and then it's just going to send it into that channel. I personally, that's how I like to consume a lot of my updates in Slack or in Teams. So that's what we did here. So once that's all set and ready to go, you have not only an agent that works really, really well, you now have an automation that's going to trigger that agent on the schedule that you chose. And what you'll end up with is you'll end up with essentially every Monday morning a message sent in your Teams channel. For this example, I just built a channel specifically for these updates. And I can just go ahead with my coffee on Monday morning and read about these HR regulatory changes. Cool. So that's an agent. That's how we build it. That's how we automate it. The last thing that I'll say before we open it up to questions is now the agent that I've built, right, in this specific example was for this specific use case of going out and looking for any sort of employment regulation or compliance changes and then delivering that on a weekly basis. But you could just as easily repurpose this agent to go out and find news for any topic. So I actually used essentially this formula for this specific agent to go out and look for the top AI news so that it will send me a briefing so that I know what do I need to know today that's happened in AI. And I actually have that run every day for myself because AI news is crazy and it changes like so drastically. Um, but it can go out and do anything. So if you're not in HR, let's say you're in procurement, right? And you want to see, hey, like what's new in procurement? You could leverage the same type of agent, just changing the sources of where you want it to go retrieve and changing the prompt to let it know, that it's a researcher that's going to be going out for sort of procurement news or for AI news, anything of that like. So again, our hope for this series of webinars that we're doing is not necessarily for you to walk out of here knowing how to build this specific agent. It's really to walk out of here feeling like you know enough to start playing around and experimenting with building other types of agents that really utilize sort of the same systems thinking that were used to build this. So I will zip my lip for a moment here and open it up for a Q&A. So Kelly, I will let you sort of be the MC for any questions that are coming in. And listen, if you have a question that's general AI, not necessarily related to anything that we
Mhm.
talked about today, drop those in as well. We're here to help.
Yeah, and I'm actually, Jeff, as you said that, I'm going to drop in your LinkedIn as well. So if there's any questions
Amazing.
anybody has that they want to know later on as well, and they're like, oh, I should have asked that, there's Jeff's LinkedIn. So please connect with him. You
Yeah,
can get
definitely.
latest news on the series that we're doing and the latest agent we're building. And I asked Jeff, I'm lucky to work with him because I Slack him probably 4 times a day with AI questions. So he has the answers, which is great. I don't see any questions coming in, but if you're like me, I get it. It's a lot to process. So they usually come when you're building it. Uh,
Yeah, I mean the last thing I'll say as well, right, is that so we set these webinars up as a series. So we do these every week. So I
yep.
think for most of you, when you registered, you probably were brought to a page that showed like this session and the next three sessions. So feel free to register for future sessions. The second thing that I'll say is that we will be following up with an email that will contain the prompts. It'll contain a bunch of the different resources. I think it'll even contain a link for all of you to request your own AI impact analysis. So when I talked earlier about this idea of making the work visible, having visibility into all the tasks and subtasks that are happening within your organization, um, we are being generous and offering anybody that's here in the webinar the ability to request one for their industry, and we'll actually send a sample of what we deem to be some of the most common tasks and subtasks within your industry that we've seen with our data set, so that you can start having a better sense of where maybe some of these tasks exist that could be automated. So there's that as well. And then my final ask is going to be if you guys can do us a huge favor, is when we send you that email with the recording, with the prompt, with all the goodies that Kelly's going to put together for you, if you can just reply and let us know like what you would like to see us build in some of these future sessions, that would be amazing for us. Or also, if you have any ideas or recommendations for a specific way we should format this series is a living, breathing thing. We want to make sure that everybody gets maximum value from these sessions. So we are totally open for feedback. And again, it could be, hey Jeff, wear a different sweater next time because that's too crazy. I'll take that feedback, fine. But if there's like a specific example of something that you'd like us to build, like let us know. We'll go in, and if we don't know how to build it, we will figure out how to build it and we will show you how to do that as well. And then I said that was the last thing, Kelly. This is the last thing. Also, we have a lot of our customers, a lot of other companies who are not currently customers, who are really, really interested in sort of having these workshops where we build these agents, with them, in front of them, within their team. Every quarter, we reserve a few of these in-person sessions, these builder sessions, where if it makes sense and we can get schedules to align, we'll come out to you guys and do like a really cool interactive session where we'll build for your organization. So if that's something that you're interested in as well, let us know. Reply to the email. Kelly will take all of those and see if we can make those work. So that's everything I got. So hopefully that was informative. Sorry for the hiccup in the beginning. Hopefully my fireside chat was entertaining enough to make that little snafu in the beginning a little bit more tolerable. But I want to thank all of you guys for spending some time with us here. I really appreciate it. I know there's other things you could be doing, but we love this stuff. We love talking about AI. We love building. So thank
And
you
now
very,
they
very
get to go
much.
out and build too.
Yeah, go build stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you next week.
Cool. Thank you guys. Cheers.